Shalom, shalom, shalom. First thing and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rahakwadash. Secondly, I want to give double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who taught me this truth and righteousness and in sincerity. And third of all, I want to give salutations to the hopeful elect that's out on the highways and byways teaching and preaching this word in truth and in sincerity. The title of this lesson is going to be, We Will Be Saved Through Grace, Not by Works. Once again, we will be saved through grace, not by works. And that we is going into the elect. You know, we as individuals, we don't know if we are of that number, the 144,000 being 12 tribes from each tribe of Israel. You know, you got Judah, Benjamin, Levi on down, you know, throughout the whole 12 tribes of Israel. You have 12,000 out of each tribe that has been selected, you know, they have been elected to be saved, you know, to be able to hear and understand this word that's being preached within these last days, you know, and through them hearing, you know, which is grace, favor being shown unto them, because the rest of the nation of Israel are blind and deaf, you know. So those members of the nation of Israel that has been given that gift to be able to hear this word and preach it, you know, and if not preach, just being able to believe and call upon those names in truth and in sincerity, these are acts of grace, you know. This is the Lord showing favor to certain, you know, children, you know, to certain members of the nation of Israel. Now, this is the book of Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 8, and it reads, For by grace are you saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Right, so there's nothing we can do to receive this grace, you know, this favor. You know, there's no amount of praying, there's no amount of sacrifice, there's no amount of anything that you can do, you know, doing good things for people in the world. There's nothing that you can do to cause yourself to receive the grace of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, the favor of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. It must be given to you as a gift. Now we're going to go into the word grace. It means, well, it's pronounced charis, charis, and I'm going to let him say it.
Strong's G 5485, charis, charis.
So it's charis, and it means grace, that which affords joy, pleasure, delight, sweetness, charm, loveliness, grace of speech. Right, so the favor of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai brings you these benefits. It brings you joy and pleasure. You know, because you're able to see the kingdom that is coming. You know, you're not within that destitute, dark place of mind, you know, living in hell, because you now have received the light. You know, you have now received the truth, and now you know that this is not the end all be all. You know, we will not be in this low condition forever, and that is an act of favor. You know, the Lord giving you favor, allowing you to see these things and be able to believe them. You know, it says it says right here, goodwill, loving kindness, favor. Right, so grace is favor, you know. And let's go into this word favor in the dictionary. It means approval, support, or liking for someone or something, an act of kindness beyond what is due or usual. Right, because the Heavenly Father is going to do more than what the elect deserves, you know, or what they desire. You know, their desires are going to be doubled and tripled, you know. So the Heavenly Father is going to cause, those who love him, to overflow with abundance, when it comes to this knowledge in this day, in these last days, when it comes to certain things being revealed, or you receiving certain gifts, the gift of healing, the gift, to be able to see the prophecies, within the world, and being able to perceive what is being said within the scriptures, connecting the two, but it also says approval, right? Because that favor that has been given to the elect, it is also a badge of approval, and it will become more and more obvious as the times get tougher and tougher, because that approval is ultimately, okay, here we go. That approval is ultimately approving them for salvation, approving them to be able to be protected by the fiery arrows of Satan. Salakia, I just sneezed. But it's ultimately that favor, it's ultimately a badge of approval, for certain prophecies that the elect, that are prophesied about the elect, to be able to come to pass, that grace that they are under, which is the blood of Yahushai, Yahushai giving his life, to cover his elect children, that in these times they may be built up, continuing to fall and, go through hell and growing stronger through that, them receiving that grace, it ultimately is going to show forth, within the time of trouble, that approval, because everybody else in the world, they're going to be going through hell, and the elect will be going through certain situations as well, but they're going to have that hedge of protection, they're going to have that faith, that favor, so they're going to be being delivered through certain things, the Heavenly Father is going to approve of them being saved from certain scenarios that could cause them to be harmed or put to death, so they're going to be delivered from that grace. It says support or liking for someone or something. The Heavenly Father likes for the elect to ultimately be saved and return unto him, the Heavenly Father, in the name of the Son, Yahushai gave up his life for the elect, therefore he obviously wants the elect to be redeemed, because that's what he gave his life for, that's what he sacrificed himself for, it says support, because the elect are receiving support right now, and they will receive support when, all hell breaks loose and it gets extremely bad out here. They're receiving spiritual support, through receiving certain spiritual gifts, like I had said, receiving knowledge, having certain things being revealed unto them. All of these things are the Lord showing favor, the elect receiving these benefits is the Lord showing them favor, and through that favor they will be delivered, not through their works, because you got a lot of camps out here preaching works, keep the law. Yes, we rehearse the righteous acts to the best of our ability, and we keep the laws that we can keep, but we are within captivity while also being in these sinful bodies that constantly desire to go off and that constantly do go off. Therefore, the law will not be able to, the law is not what we are going to be judged by, it's going to be either you were given that grace, that favor of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai, which means you are of the elect, or you weren't, which means you are not of the elect. But it reads right here, of the merciful kindness by which Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai exerting his holy influence upon souls. Right. So the Heavenly Father has influenced the elect, to desire to go down that right path, to desire the sincere milk over the, polluted wine of Babylon the Great. After they were woken up, and brought back to remembrance of who they were, ever since then, the Heavenly Father has continued to influence their spirits to, go through certain things and to, do certain works that is ultimately going to continue to build their faith. Shoot, even them going through certain situations in the world, it's ultimately for their faith to be built up. You might be in a situation where it look like you got no hope. It ain't no way to get out of it. You ain't got no options, no resources at your disposal. But the Heavenly Father allows you to be in that situation just so that he can show his favor in delivering you, and giving you a way out, and these things increase your faith, So that's why it says through, well, let me go back. That's why it says, that's why it says, for by grace are you saved through faith. Right, because that grace and that favor, that is those who receive that favor, they are the only ones that can truly have faith, So by that grace, you receive faith, because the Lord shows you favor. And that favor, you continuing to see the Lord showing you favor, it continues to build up your faith, And through that faith, the scriptures tell you faith without works is dead. So works go hand in hand with that faith that you will be receiving, through the Heavenly Father showing you favor, and ultimately you will, be inclined and you will desire to do the things that will please Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai, and ultimately that's what the elect will be doing. That's what is within their spirit, So although we will not be saved according to our works and the keeping of the law, our works and the keeping of the law is a part of our faith, If we truly have faith in Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai, we will do certain things and we won't do certain things. And that's just the reality of it, But ultimately, if you are of the elect, you will be delivered. And if you are not of the elect, you will not be delivered, no matter how righteous you believe you are, or no matter how perfectly you try to keep the commandments. You must be given that favor, and through that favor, you will be saved. Now, this is the book of Romans, chapter 11 and verse 6, and it reads, and if by grace, then it is no more of works. Otherwise, grace is no more grace. But if it be of works, then it is no more grace. Right. Otherwise, work is no more work. Right. So it is by grace. Because if it wasn't, if we weren't saved through grace, hold on. Let me just reread it right fast. It says, and if by grace, then it is no more of works, which it is, because we are saved through grace, favor, So our works will not decide if we are saved or if we perish ultimately. And it continues to read, otherwise grace is no more grace. Right, because if we were judged according to our works, then ultimately, well, the elect, if they were judged according to their works, then ultimately that grace wouldn't be a thing. They wouldn't have that grace, because that grace, which means favor, that is going to deliver them no matter what their works are, because we have done a lot of wicked things within all of our lifetimes, So if it was going by works, none of us will be worthy to be saved, but it's through that favor, that grace, and I'm not saying that, saying this to say, oh, just forget the law, you can do whatever you want, eat all the abominable foods because we not saved through our works. And no, as a man of the Lord, you are supposed to desire the ways of your power. You are supposed to desire to please the Heavenly Father, in doing the things that Yahweh Shai would do, but it says, but if it be of works, then it is no more of grace. Right. So if we are judged by our works, then grace that wouldn't be true. That the elect are under grace if they were judged according to their works, So ultimately, the elect will not be judged according to their works. They will be judged according to grace, Either you have that favor of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, which in the Lord showing favor to you, you will be delivered, or you don't have that favor, and in you not having that favor, you will continue to be blind here in Babylon the Great, not knowing who you truly are or caring to know, and you will perish serving, your carnal masters upon earth, Esau, Edom, serving these carnal idols, these false gods, that are not true and living. You will ultimately perish here living like a heathen, but the elect will be saved through grace, not by their works. So any false prophets you hear out here preaching, the law will save you, keeping of the law is how you're going to be delivered. No, ultimately you must be given that grace, and through that grace, certain things will be revealed unto you, like the name of the Heavenly Father, certain customs, the holy tongue, a lot of things will be revealed unto you through the Spirit, whatever, you need in that moment. And the Heavenly Father will continue to build you up through that, But that was the point of this lesson. We will not be saved according to our works, but according to grace. And ultimately, the only ones that will be shown that favor, which is grace, will be the 144,000 elect members of the nation of Israel. But until next time, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Shalom.